Hello, and welcome back for part two of Teaching Wages for the CCR&R Consultants. I'm Jody Norton. I'm with Region 5, and we have got others with us today.
Hi, I'm Amber Cobham. I'm with Region 1.
And I'm Ashley Adi. I'm with Iowa AUIC.
So we're hoping that you had time to watch the first section of this, and then this will be able to build on that information for you. So a little bit of what we'll be doing today is CCRNR and IUIC both recognize that there's a direct correlation between a really empowered workforce and the quality of care that they can provide. So we're going to talk about how both teach and wages programs will elevate that workforce. We're going to look at providing some information to deepen your understanding of these programs and also provide you with some strategies to enable you to be more effective when you're promoting these programs. And you can do that by sharing resources and creating some meaningful connections. And of course, we want you to feel really prepared to address any pushback you might encounter. You're probably familiar with the but why strategies. So we want to help you with some responses for those and also look at some myths. It is really important to keep these strategies right in the front of your mind and keep really open channels of communication between the provider and IUIC. You're going to hear both Amber and myself recommend that you facilitate that conversation with a joint email or a phone call, as opposed to just leaving them with the contact information.
So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion, me and Jody, about how we can, as consultants, use teach and wages when supporting programs to reach their goals when it comes to recruitment, retention, or just their everyday quality practices. Jody, how are some ways that you help your programs or your consultants help their programs meet these goals with teach and wages?
I like to lean heavily on retention for both teach and wages. Teach because it kind of gives them a lifeline of future goals to stay there. They're signing a contract. And then wages because who doesn't want to stay somewhere if you get a bonus check every 6 months? How about you, Amber?
I can agree with that. As a previous participant, it was nice to just get a bonus for doing what you already do. I think a lot of times there's a misconception that there's more work to it or there's other caveats to it, but it's truly you're employed with the program you're currently at for 6 months and you get an extra check because of it that goes direct to you, not to the program, not to the entity. It goes right in your pocket, which is it was really nice.
Thank you both. In service of addressing those but whys and going a little bit deeper for consultants and their understanding of teaching wages, we've put together some myths that we hear about the programs. Or some myths that you might be presented with from providers as you are encouraging them to increase their level of education. So we'll walk through each of these, and I'll give you some arguments and some counterpoints to use as you're talking with those providers. The first is that my program can't afford to support staff on teach. This is a very common piece of feedback that we get when providers learn that teach works as a partnership with the scholarship individual, the sponsoring program in the case of center staff, and teach. Often they don't even want to ask their director. And the reality is teach costs much less than programs and individuals think that it costs. Oftentimes there are professional development dollars that are already set aside that could be used for teach instead of for training. Teach has a cost calculator on our website to help programs really work through what the cost to their program would be. And the longer term pushback, the sort of bigger vision is that turnover is extremely costly. It costs programs a lot of money. It costs programs a lot of time, which also is money. And so this is really an investment, as Jody said earlier, in the retention of your staff and a strategy to address that tide of turnover. . We often also hear that I'm too old to go to college. There's no age limit on education. I think our oldest teacher recipient ever was 72, and she earned CDA for college credit. Our average recipient age is 35, so closer to 40 than a traditional college student age of 19, 20, 21. Also, our average GPA for all of these teacher recipients who are very wary that they are college material is 3.5 or greater every year, which means people are getting mostly A's and B's in their classes. And that's because what they're hearing in college is so relevant to the work that they're doing every day. There's also free tutoring supports at many colleges. And of course, those individuals have the support from their teaching counselors to address barriers, to feel encouraged when things aren't going as well as they want. But certainly no one is too old. Back to the money again, we often hear that college is too expensive. Teach pays for 90% of an individual's tuition. So as a scholarship recipient, your share as a center program staff is 10%. It's 50% as a home provider. What I can tell you is that for folks working on associate degrees, most of the time, they will make money going to college instead of paying money to go to college. We at Teach understand that early childhood is not a career in which people are getting rich, not a career in which you want to incur student loans. And so the supports of the scholarship are enough to really cover the bulk of the cost. We do also require that everyone apply for federal financial aid. And so if someone is eligible for Pell, that helps Teach help them even more. It alleviates some of their share of costs. Again, a reference to the cost calculator here, where an individual could sit down, and I strongly encourage the use of the cost calculator alongside a Teach counselor to identify the individual costs associated with that particular person's circumstances. Another myth or pushback that we hear is, if I'm busy, I have kids, I have a family, I'm working full time, I can't commit to my whole degree. And the reality is, the truth is, you're not committing to a full degree. When you sign a Teach contract, you're committing to a minimum of 9 credits. That's 3 classes, 1 class a semester. And that's it. If you choose not to renew your contract after that, or if you need to take a break, you can always take a break. Sometimes I think that commitment feels too big to those providers and teachers. And so this is a tool for you all to say, really, it's a small bite. It's 3 college courses. It's going to fulfill your HHS training requirements for the year. So that's going to come off your plate. Try it. See what happens. Another myth related to college coursework is that I live too far away from a college. I don't have to drive there. There are many fully online degree programs available in Iowa. So the accessibility in our state is great for those who aren't able to travel and attend college courses in person. So here's another scenario and time for discussion, and we can hear from Jody and Amber. What if someone wants to participate but can't due to IP for K? I'm gonna have to answer the it's important to remember for Teach that IP for K is not a requirement. So Teach, again, if you can sort of stick in your mind that Teach casts a broader net of eligibility than Wages does. So if someone is interested in Teach but doesn't have IP for K, that's okay. We will encourage them to move forward in that process, but it will not make them ineligible for a scholarship. And then what options are available if someone doesn't qualify to teach? It's pretty rare that someone doesn't qualify. I would say more common than an individual not being eligible is that we can't get that program to get on board. We can't get that board or director. We would encourage that person to apply for federal financial aid and see if they could get a grant. There's money does not have to be paid back. If that person is on wages, using their wages stipend would be a possibility of helping cover some college coursework. Amber or Jody, are there other strategies that you have for people related to IQ4K or qualifying to teach?
I think this discussion goes to what Jody was saying about some of those but whys. I think when we're in consultation as consultants, there's a couple key things that providers have found that if they say, that's a stopping point or a roadblock. And it's just knowing that a lot of those roadblocks or barriers are things we can navigate around and have discussions around, rather than them just saying, oh, I can't, IQ4K related, and then stopping to talk about it. Asking some of those clarify questions like, oh, you don't currently participate in IQ4K, why is that? Or did you know about tier 0 if they're talking about wages? So I think rather than using them as a roadblock, because if our silence agrees with them, asking the questions to see what's next. Well, what can we explore? What about IQ4K makes it unachievable? Maybe they hadn't had a consultant available to walk through the IQ4K process with them. So their action plan might look like finish IQ4K or do a level 1 to do wages. Again, it's just a lot of conversations that don't have to end with that first but why that Jody was talking about.
I agree with Amber. Sometimes they hear IQ4K and they just immediately put up a wall. And maybe they haven't even looked into it yet. Like Amber said, maybe they haven't had a consultant come out and talk to them yet. And we like to think of it as, is it a speed bump? Is it a roadblock, or is the road truly closed to them? Because maybe it's just a speed bump that they just need to take some time to work on those participation factors. And it's not actually a barrier for them. It's just going to take a little bit of time looking at what have they already completed, and getting some things checked off a list is always very satisfying. I personally love checking things off, so I love sitting down and doing that with people. And like Amber said, if they're in a center looking at that tier 0, and then making sure that they can qualify that way, and then making a long-term plan with the director and the board to try and get that participation going, and maybe getting someone through Teach and Wages is getting their education will support them in IQ4K because they will be checking off some of those other things. They'll have a better understanding of screening and assessment tools. They'll be better prepared to hold conferences with families. And of course, they're going to score higher in teaching and learning and staff qualifications. So lots of different ways that the two programs between Teach and Wages and IQ4K all tie together.
Thank you both.
I think sometimes, to your point, Ashley, when you were saying like programs might not be willing to have the conversation, highlighting the fact that IYAYC's counselors love to have those discussions with boards, directors, all the things. I think a lot of times there's the notion that, oh, my board will never approve or my director will never approve. But I've seen conversations that are brief and effective to where just one presentation kind of gets those misconceptions out of the way, and then that's an easier barrier. So just knowing that conversations can happen and IYAYC staff can facilitate it with a good referral.
Thank you, Amber. Great point. We really do. And we understand that the programs are sort of ours to make the pitch for. So we're happy to come out to staff meetings. We are happy to attend board meetings. We really always want to make sure that conversation at least has the opportunity. And the other thing I wanted to just add before we move to the next slide is continuing that conversation. Often people are scared and hesitant about making a change and investing in themselves. And sometimes what really makes the difference is that person who believes in, the person who keeps asking questions, the person who keeps saying, I really think that you can do this. I see this potential. Don't underestimate the importance of the relationship that you have with those providers when you're having the conversations about um, taking college coursework in particular. So again, just to summarize some of the making the case and the assurances, I wanted to have this slide so that you all had it as a touch point and a place to refer back to. People can always take breaks or stop classes without any penalty. Some people have had a previous experience with college or even with teach that maybe didn't go great, and I think it's important to ask those questions as a consultant and think about what's different than 5 or 10 years ago. We have people all the time who say, oh yeah, I tried college right out of high school and it wasn't for me. Well, they were maybe studying something that they didn't care about, or they didn't really want to be there. And now they've chosen early childhood as a career path. And that's completely different than being 20 and taking general education courses. The circumstances can change. Experience does not have to be the end experience. Reminder that college coursework fulfills the HHS training requirements for a year, so that's one less thing on the to-do list for folks who are taking college classes. It's a big step. It can be scary, but you're not alone. 40% of our teacher recipients are first-generation college students. I haven't had that experience. You don't have someone in your family they can call and ask about what is this like. But that's what the teach counselors are here for. To provide that support, to answer questions, to troubleshoot problems, truly whatever those folks need. Remember, you've already made UCE a career. So this is a great way to validate the knowledge and experience that you have. I talk to people all the time, so we've been doing this for a couple of years and know what I'm doing. Of course you do. Put a certificate on it, put a degree on it as a validation of your knowledge. Remember that experience counts, especially for the CDA credentials. If you have someone who has lots of training already, let's wrap it up and put a bow on it and get a CDA credential awarded. So that person has a certificate, they can earn IQ4K points, and can also hopefully be eligible for wages. Also, there's some good financial benefits to participating in Teach. The annual average wage increase for Teach participants is around 19%. That's huge. That is in part due to the bonuses or raises that come as part of the Teach contract, but also because people are generally getting raises due to the additional education there. So there are financial benefits to Teach as well as we. So another discussion question for you, Amber and Jody. How have you found success supporting programs and providers to participate in teaching? So what are some of the strategies that you use? What are some of the arguments, if you will, that you know that help people make things?
I'd say one of the biggest ones was on your slide before, and it's just that college credits count for training hours. Whether you're a home-based or a center-based program, there are registration hours or license hours that are required of you as a professional. So investing in yourself with those college credits checks both boxes. You get to invest in yourself by continuing your degree, and you also meet those regulatory or licensing training requirements. So it's kind of 2 birds, 1 stone. So when programs or home providers might be talking to you about, I've been a home program or I've been a center program participant for so many years, I've done all the trainings, there's nothing left for me, I'm having to retake stuff I've already taken. That's a great opportunity to say, have you thought about going back to school? Have you thought about doing the credit module option where you might just pick one class that's of interest to you and testing it out? It's whenever I can make one thing work for 2 birds, 1 stone logic, it always works for me.
Kind of piggybacking on that idea, Amber, getting to know what training did they really enjoy and maybe guiding them toward, you know what, there's probably a college course that aligns with that. I see that you have got a massive reading center in your program. Have you considered taking children's literature as a starting point? You might really enjoy that and learn more about it. Um, and then really getting them to that buy-in to investing in themselves and in their own future. You're doing this for you. These aren't things that are going to expire. Your training hours will expire. A college credit, that's yours. That belongs to you, and no one can take that away. If you leave this program, if you leave early childhood entirely, these credits still stick. They still matter. I think that's important for them to keep in mind.
And I think what's next in their journey. I think so many times we have conversations when we're PD planning with staff about them saying, oh, well, at the end of this time frame, or once my kids go back to school, or once X happens, then Y, right? So what are they really planning towards in their next step of their future? Maybe they desire eventually to be in a school age program or to be a teacher or, to do home visiting with the AEA or whatever it could be. These are things they could invest in themselves now that could come up later in the future and be a benefit. So, what is their end goal? What is their end game? If they were to dream big, what do they see for themselves? We have to start somewhere, and this could be a good start.
Thank you. All right. I want to talk through some myths with wages now to shift gears a little bit. So I don't have any early childhood credits. We hear it all the time. And I can't, again, underscore enough to ask and ask again that question. Because people seem to have more credits than I think from a really long time ago, even in high school. But the reality is you don't have to have only early childhood credits. Credits from other degree paths also count for wages. It doesn't have to only be in early childhood. So get out those transcripts, take a look, send them to wages, and those folks can help make a determination about where someone might fall on the list. There are programs who do not have CCA agreements for a variety of reasons, or who don't have children on CCA. You don't have to have children on the program. You have to have the agreement in place with HHS, which is a pretty straightforward process. I have to pay back the money if I remove my program, so I don't want to take a religious stipend. That's also not true. You are being paid a a stipend for the time you've served in the program. It just looks backward to the last 6 months. So if you've been there, that money goes to keep. The application process is too difficult. Our application is pretty much demographic information, where you live, where you work, and then what kind of education you have. So you can be eligible for wages with a degree in any field, any field. Equine studies. We have floral design. We have people with all sorts of cool degrees that are working in early childhood and getting paid on wages. So the bottom line is get those providers to get a hold of their transcripts so that we can take a look and find out. We don't want to leave money on the table. So again, the CCA, just an active agreement. You don't have to have children. Degree in children. I don't want to have to pay the stipend back. I quit. There are some payback requirements for teach, and I think that's where this gets confusing for people. But because wages stipends are paid for time that has already been accumulated to the program, they do not be. We asked all of our wages recipients about the application process, and the 450 who answered said it was easy. And a few said, we'll go move away. So it really isn't a difficult process. And if someone is already on teach, you try to grab as much information as you can from that application to streamline it, we don't plan. As we talked about with teach, I think also with wages, there's an opportunity to think about wages as a recruitment and retention strategy. This is a benefit that a child care program can offer at no cost to the program. What AUAC will foot the bill, and you can help facilitate that benefit for staff. We know from the child care workforce study that turnover is a huge issue. 52% of those respondents told us they would have stayed in their job, but compensation and benefits were not. We know people are leaving the field for lots of reasons, but we know compensation is at the top of that list. So we pulled also some quotes from program recipients just to highlight the way that they're thinking about the wages supplements. And I love these. I think it helps the program speak for itself. Wages supplements make it so I can stay in early childhood, which is my passion, instead of leaving for a K-12 setting. It's allowed us to build up our emergency fund and make ends meet during stressful times financially. And we think about the staff wellness component of feeling stable financially. We know that those folks are better able to teach and care for young children when they are not worried about the expenses. So we do get a lot of good feedback from our program participants, and I think that that is a helpful tool to highlight for center directors who would be there. Again, you see satisfaction with my job being high with wages recipients. It encourages me to stay with the program. It makes me feel more appreciated and recognized for my work. All of those, I think, are very compelling.
Can I make one comment about retention in wages? So something that I did when I was on the wages program as a home provider is that I had already invested in myself and in my program by going through Teach. And I, of course, worked for myself. And so I didn't have a retirement account. So I would use my wages check and put that into an IRA I set up with a retirement specialist. And then I could continue to pay toward my future self and build up a benefit that I didn't have. And that is something that I do recommend to directors or home providers when they are saying, well, they want to leave because of benefits. This is a way that you can pay your future self and it doesn't cost you anything.
A wonderful quote to follow, Jody, and I think certainly is a benefit that is a great to this workforce.
I like the way too you highlighted on in the last slide about like caregiver burnout, right? And using that for a break for yourself. I think so many times as providers, we get caregiver fatigue. We spend all the time caring for other people. Wages as a bonus, you're not dictating what they have to spend that money on. And so that's just a great misconception. I think sometimes they might say, I don't need funds for my program, or I don't need this. We realize that like you're pouring everything into those things. So here is something to celebrate what you've done, recharge your battery to keep chugging forward. So just another tip.
Some more pieces for making the case and some reassurances for wages. We certainly hear tax implications are a question mark for folks. This is taxable. We do not have a way to take taxes out in the agreement. But what I always want folks to think about is, you're still coming out of it. Someone hands you $100 and the government is going to take 30, you still have $70 in your pocket that you didn't have before. So as much as you can help providers come ahead to take that income and be prepared, it really still is a benefit to them. They're still coming out ahead. How programs use wages as a recruitment tool. You have wages here, you would be eligible. programs, think about the benefit to the program as a. In fiscal year 24, the average 6-month supplement was over $2,000. It's a sizable amount of money, especially for people who are higher up the wages scale. And we want to get it into the hands of the people who need and deserve it. So another discussion question for us, if a provider were to discontinue their education, but eventually return, would they need to reapply for WAIT? It depends how long. Generally speaking, a teach or wages application is good for about a year. To revisit the eligibility. You can always come home. Always come home. And I think that that's important. Important.
And I think part of that discussion too, and Ashley, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but wages is just ensuring that you've had 6 months of time at the program. So let's say they were to discontinue their education but qualified for wages, they would still get that wages check even if they're not continuing to do teach, as long as they meet one of those tiers, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Not a part of this question, but certainly something that we could use consultant support for is helping wages recipients anticipate and plan for what we call their time to date. So when you look at the wages scale, there are levels of available aspects next to them. Those levels are temporary, which means someone can receive that level of payment for 2 years. And in that time, they need to have accrued more education to move up to the next level, or they will be dropped from it. And as you can imagine, we have unlimited there are letters and postcards and phone calls and emails about that date and what people need and how long. But in reality, people are busy providing for children. And so I'm aware you're working with someone who has a country date. You need some questions about if they're going to continue it, if they're going to take those college courses so they can stay at mine. Wages would be great help from our perspective. We're doing what we can, but sometimes I think they need that nudge, that look in their eyes from someone that they know best to help keep them. So as a review of the resources that are available, we have a variety, over 1 flyer on each program. They're available on our website. There are videos, 2 3-minute videos, kind of an overview of each program that are also available on the website. Teach and wages staff are also available. It's our job to talk about the programs and to help recruit and to explain. And I would say even for teach, from a teach perspective, if you have someone who's thinking about professional development and what is the next step for them, and they maybe aren't interested in teaching, so with that. These folks know their community college and four-year institutions in the state better, I think, than anybody else when it comes to those folks to use their expertise. We also have reports and data. Those are the arguments that are compelling to people, but there's lots of resources available on our website.
Can I talk a little bit about the resources available? Is that okay for the consultant?
Please.
So I think a lot of times as we're going for that prep, like your pre-visit time, like what time are you spending to prepare for a consultation? If you know you're going to be doing professional development planning, or if you know you're going to be talking about requirement hours for IQ4K, making sure you've thought about what resources are available for teach and wages to bring those along with you to the visit. It's very easy to grab a packet or print a flyer, knowing that it might come up in conversation. And you can still, let's say, loop back to that in your post visit time too. If, let's say, you didn't have the flyer available, saying, you know what, I have this, I will send it to you after the visit. But just knowing that these resources are available, having access to them, knowing before you go out who your email contacts are, that way you can really do that communication loop to make it a great referral. Is just great office planning prep time stuff that I hope that all consultants would like to do to be successful with their visit.
And I will say, we're happy to send you them. We have the more extended version brochures that you all have seen. We can mail those or send those from here to someone who's heading to their area as well, so no shortage of resources to be found. So as we come to a close, I wanted to just talk through some key takeaways. Obviously, as you've heard these last two sessions, there are lots of intricacies about teaching wages. You don't need to know them. We just need you to know that the programs exist and have a lens on who might be eligible. And then as much as you can connect them back to us, please do. I get questions a lot about, well, this person is here and she left and why didn't we get a contact? It doesn't matter. We have, if in doubt, generic email addresses for each of the programs, for Teach for Wages and CDA. And contacting those accounts will get you in touch with the right person. Referrals are infinitely more successful when that email connection is made between Teach and Wages and the provider. So for consultants, instead of saying, well, you should email Teach, to say, hey, would it be okay if we send an email to Teach and I'll put your email address on it? Then the teaching wages staff can follow up with that person. Very good. We also offer teaching wages one-on-one training via iPort once a quarter. So if you have folks who you think could benefit from that, send those Zooms or look for that training. I think it's helpful for directors as well as providers. We do have a director specific session also. And remember that we love to come out and see people. We love to come to staff meetings and talk to boards and center directors. So if there are times you're going places that you think could benefit from a joint visit, we would be really happy to try to get that scheduled. You know, if there are communities of practice or directors groups that are gathering, that's another time that we would be happy to try to connect with those folks. The challenge always for us in promoting teaching wages is that we know there's lots of turnover in the field. So even if we reach every person in every county in 2025, odds are 30% of the people are new in 2026. And so we have to come back, continue to educate and continue to share that information. And we also know, as I'm sure you all do, sometimes it takes hearing the information 1, 2, or 3 or 4 times before someone really is ready to hear it and ready to think about it. So please thank you guys. We are here to help, and also the goals of teaching wages are very much in line with the goals of CCO. And we make the best system of care and education for young children and supporting teachers to help them do that. So as we come to an end, any additional questions, comments?
I think just the biggest thing is just remembering consultants, you have so much on your plates at all times. You have so many external partners, you have so many things. You do not need to be an expert on teacher wages. Just if you can take away how you contact the experts is the biggest part. Knowing the emails to reach out to, it was listed in the previous slide. Have them in your arsenal, make the connections and make it in an authentic way, and you'll be successful with it.
Amber, I really like that you mentioned it in an authentic way, because I think that's where CCR and our consultants are able to bridge that between the provider and IUIC, because they're there in person most of the time having those conversations, and it can just come up authentically. They could just say, "Oh, I heard so and so is taking a class. Well, what questions do you have about that? How can we start that conversation?" And like Ashley said, it might take multiple times, but getting that seed planted and letting them know again that you believe in them, sometimes that's just what they need, is for someone to believe in them and help them find the connection the person that they need to be talking to get it started.
Yeah. And then that follow-up piece too, like you're saying, Jody, being their cheerleader. Like maybe the next time you're on a visit, if you made that joint email or you notice communication slowed down between the email threads saying, what's new with that? How's it going? They might identify barriers that then you could come back and talk about. Oh, let's reach back out to them. Let's talk about this road bump you found. It's just a communication loop that we can navigate. So,
And something I've been saying on that note, to even our internal teams at INC, perhaps who are at a staff meeting to talk about wages and a teach question came up that you didn't know how to answer. All your friends, they're in the office. I would say the same to you all. If the context is such that it's a quick question that you want to answer while someone is interested and actively engaged, give us a call, pop us a quick email and see if we can do it in real time. So we just, save everybody that back and forth. But I do think there's something about catching that attention and interest in the moment too. So we're here. Thank you all very much for your time and attention. We really appreciate your engagement around Teach and Wages and CDA. And we look forward to continuing to strengthen this partnership as time goes on.